Today on the Geoff Wilson Show, I'm interviewing somebody who is a trailblazer in the sports card hobby. He's grown an entire business by thinking of sports cards as a lifestyle brand. And he's doing big things for diversity in the sports card hobby as well. You're going to want to see this. Hello, and here we go. Welcome to another episode of the Geoff Wilson Show. I'm honored today to bring in a special guest, Dr. Collectible, Daryl, from here in Atlanta into the studio, and we've got a lot of great things to talk about. Dr. Collectible has built an entire brand in the sports card hobby. He's become a leading content creator, and he's also built out a fashion brand, which is really interesting to talk about. But he is leading the way in more ways than just that. He has been a big advocate for diversity in the sports card hobby and has become the first African American ambassador for the National, among many other things. We're going to talk about all of that and more. Let's get started and bring Daryl into the studio. Daryl, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here in the studio in Atlanta.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm excited to hear more about your background. You have had a big rise in the hobby, over the last year. Like I'm now seeing your face everywhere. If anyone out there is on Instagram and following a lot of hobby accounts, they probably have seen you popping up in their feed often. Yes. So I'm curious to hear how this came about. Tell me the backstory here. Kind of what got you into the hobby? What started this for you?
So it was really like my dad pushed me into like getting into cards, and from there and it started at a very young age. Years later, my dad, when I finally moved to Atlanta, because I'm originally from East St. Louis, Illinois, been in Atlanta for about good 13, 14 years now. My dad would send me Kobe Bryant cards for my birthday. Just sending me my cards that I just been sitting on, or cards that he was sitting on. One of my favorite players of all time. And from there, at the Kobe Bryant death, I started seeing the numbers on Kobe Bryant cards, and I was going through a rough time in my life and was able to get back on track by selling sports cards. From there, I was like, yo, Dad, I'm gonna drive home. Drove all the way from Atlanta to Illinois, and was like, hey, let me get half of the collection. Let me see if I can sell it. From there, drove back home and got to selling everything on eBay. Everything was selling. And from there, I told my dad, hey, just go half. And I put the other half into Dr. Collectible.
Okay.
Put it into my brand. And I started getting merch.
Okay.
Things of that nature. And then boom, that's just where the idea came from, how I kind of like just all started, just from like my dad collection and just him sending me Kobe Bryant cards.
Interesting. Cool. So it sounds like your dad's been a collector for a long time.
Yeah.
Has it been mainly NBA cards that he was into originally and that you got into?
My dad's a big baseball guy.
Okay.
He's a Yankee guy, baseball cards. I mean, anybody from like Mark McGwire, he has a lot of Mark McGwire. Just being from that East St. Louis area, was a big fan of him. But then I also have a lot of King Griffey Jr. So it goes from a list of like pictures. Everything is organized with him. He got like baseballs. He got all kind of stuff, memorabilia. So for him, baseball was his main thing. Secondly, I would say basketball. And when I started playing basketball at a young age, they were like, okay, I'm going to collect more basketball, see if my son would like this. And eventually it kind of worked out. I mean, like 17, 20 years later.
So you said Kobe Bryant was, kind of your superstar, right? Your icon.
Yeah.
Was that because when you were young playing basketball that he was like kind of the guy that you like idolized?
Yes, yeah. That's how it was. When I first fell in love with basketball, it was definitely Kobe. And, I'm going to say this. A lot of people like, yo, Michael Jordan, who's the GOAT, things of that nature. For me, it's Kobe. In 1996, between the time Jordan was really about to end his prime, things of that nature, 97, I was 6, 7 years old. I was playing video games.
Yeah.
I was into Super Nintendo, things of that nature. Yeah. So for me, when I really started to touch the basketball, shoot, play the game, and understood it, it really started coming around right when Kobe got in the game.
Yeah.
For me,
That would have been young Kobe. That would have been his, right. 96 was his rookie year. So that would have been right at the beginning of the rise of Kobe and then all the attention being paid to him.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's cool. And so you had a big Kobe collection. You obviously build up a big collection. And then you said 2020, when you got the collection back, you started to sell cards, obviously, kind of good timing on that with the market being hot back then. Were you doing other things at that time? And then this kind of then exposed you to like, wow, cards could actually be like a full business for me.
So I was always into business. Before I really got into cards, something I was doing a lot was dancing and acting. A lot of people, I don't speak on a lot in the hobby because I'm like, it's all about cards. So I try not to mix that culture together. But I always had a business mindset. And when it came to like collecting cards, I started to like seeing what can I do from dancing and acting and just doing shows and things of that nature, and how can I take that entertainment base and put it towards sports cards, like make it cool. When you're talking about looking at content, it's the first thing you see. So it's like, for me, I was always like, yo, how can I get into a business mindset? And I sat back for a year and watched your content and many others, talent. There's a lot of guys out there that make content, and I'm like, okay, what could I do differently? I'm consuming this content, but I want to be able to put it out as myself. So that's when I wanted to say, like, right at 2020, I started finding myself like, I'm gonna call myself Dr. Collectible. I always wanted a PhD, but I'm like, if I'm gonna get in anything, I'm getting in the hobby every day.
It's cool. That's a cool brand. I like that. I mean, branding is a large part of success, when you're when you're doing something with content, like how you brand yourself or your accounts and that kind of thing. And, part of the reason why I've had success with Sports Card Investor is that's become it's kind of a memorable nomenclature. It's people remember that it's they associate it with me. Dr. Collectible, I feel is like a very strong, unique brand as well. And I like what you just said. Like you wanted to get a PhD, so you're getting a PhD in the hobby, and that's why you're Dr. Collectible. I feel like that's very well branded. And then I know you've, as you said, you've come out with a lot of merch and everything like that. So was getting the brand right kind of one of your first, thought processes?
Yeah, that was my first process, was getting the brand right, getting a logo where I would feel comfortable with. Not only when I looked at my brand, I wanted to say, hey, how can I make it a lifestyle brand? How can I make it to where not just only people in collectibles like it, but just the regular, person will want to say, hey, I like that hat right there. I like the logo, it's dope. And also, is exposing new people to the hobby. So once again, when it comes to like streetwear and they start looking into the background of it and people that's into fashion, for me, I like to be fashionable. So for me, I'm like, okay, how can I make the brand cool? Then for me, after sitting back and thinking about what could I do to make revenue in the hobby without having to sell a card? That was my other thing. My biggest thing this year, how can I make revenue in the hobby without selling a card? And from there, Pandora box opened up for me. I started thinking of different ways, creative ways, because I wanted to steer away from selling my PC. A lot of stuff that I was collecting was PC. It was hard for me to sell them things, especially a lot of Kobe. So that's when it kicked to me. I was like, okay. I figured out like 7 different ways of like making revenue in the hobby for myself. And that's how it kind of just all bloomed out to where everything just started working for me in a different way, trying to look at what I call the hobby as the matrix.
Right.
Try to look at it that way.
Interesting. And making money is a tough challenge for content creators, right? Because
Yes, sir.
like obviously we do a lot on YouTube, and the ad revenue that we get from those ads that run at the beginning of YouTube videos, it's very small. Like, people are always surprised how small it is.
Yes.
YouTube, unless you have a channel that has millions of subscribers, probably millions and millions of subscribers, you're not really getting enough ad revenue to build a whole business on just the ad revenue alone.
Yes, sir.
And of course, if you're on Instagram, I know you do a lot on Instagram. There's very limited opportunities, to get any type of ad revenue from Instagram. So there has to be other ways. And, we've at Sports Card Investor, obviously, we take on sponsorships outside of the ad revenue, right? We take on big sponsorships from companies and talk about them in our videos. And that certainly pays better than the ad revenue does. And then, of course, we also have our own products like market movers that, we advertise through our content and push people to. And so that's our number one revenue source, doing things like that. Right. And we've invested in companies like Stand Up Displays and Slap Strongs. And then we advertise them on our channel, and then that, returns. So we've kind of figured out those pathways. And whenever I talk to creators, like new creators, I always say, like, hey, if you're going to actually make this a business, you got to figure out pathways to monetize that are beyond just assuming that ad revenue is going to come in. So it sounds like you very much had these thoughts. You came up with kind of different ideas for how you could monetize. What has been most effective for you? Like, what kind of has worked best for you in that way?
So the first thing I said, as a businessman and looking at the hobby as a business, I wanted to say, okay, first thing I wanted to do is create partnerships with cool companies, good companies that are doing great things in the hobby. And with them partnerships, something that I think about is equity. Looking at the long-term vision as well. So not only put myself in place to do partnerships with companies that are in the hobby, but also thinking about the longevity part, which is the equity, whether if it's a well-known brand or whether if it's a brand that I see possibility on what it could do for itself in the hobby and seeing growth. So that was the biggest thing for me. The other few things was also apparel, doing sales on that, and like I say, even gaining attraction outside the hobby. The other thing was I looked at how can I get to the kids as well. And for me, I didn't have a lot of opportunities, especially where I'm from. There's not a lot of opportunities for kids. And when I was thinking about that, I'm like, yo, I want to be able to give back, but also if I'm going to put my time into this, be able to make a living for myself. So doing the after school program, teaching kids about sports cards, getting kids out of the streets, giving them opportunity. All my kids had their own eBay accounts ran by their parents. So not only that, they're learning how to make revenue for themselves at a very young age, whether that money could be saved and put into college, things of that nature. So I always think about creating an ecosystem where I am winning as well as I'm able to give back from what I'm learning and things of that nature, and try to install that into kids, because I think they're the future, So
they definitely are. That's cool. I want to talk more about the kids aspect, but at first I want to hear a little more about the apparel, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. You said create a lifestyle brand. I'm trying to think, like, throughout the hobby, are there any other brands that I would really consider to be truly a lifestyle brand? Not really sure that anyone's fully cracked that code, right? Like, and it would make sense though for the hobby to have a lifestyle brand, right? And people identify, I mean, within the world of sports, and almost everybody in the hobby, particularly the sports card hobby, is a sports fan.
Yes.
And so, people like to buy sports apparel, and they like to show off their team and support their team and everything of that nature. And so what's the equivalent of that in the hobby? There's, we sell some shirts and swag for a sports card investor, but I wouldn't say that we've, become a full on lifestyle brand. Right. And that's interesting that you've like pushed in that direction. So do you feel like apparel is going to continue to be kind of a big part of your future? And is that something you see kind of expanding out, or what are you trying to do there?
Yeah, so when it comes to apparel, I'm thinking about the different ways I can shape anyone into wanting to wear Dr. Collectible apparel. And when I think about that, I'm a big hat guy. You may see me with like the bucket hat. I love vintage hats as well. So I try to acquire that into my apparel. Also, I think about how I would want to wear something on a daily basis, whether if it's a t-shirt, long sleeve, whether if it's jeans. I'm thinking about shoes. I'm thinking about every different aspect where I can expose my brand in a cool way, genuine way, but also it brings you right back to the hobby, because that's what I'm in. So when you start looking at that, and I'm like, okay, with the lifestyle brand and how you can put it together, I mean, literally, branding is everything. But then on top of that, man, with apparel, I feel like there's a open market for that. I feel like Bleecker Trading is doing that as well.
You know what? You're right. That's a great example. I think Bleecker Trading is probably, outside of what you're doing, I think they are the closest to what we have to a lifestyle brand in the hobby. 100%.
Yeah.
That's a good call.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm be honest, like the car show I just left this weekend on Hobby Slam, I seen a kid have on a Bleecker Trading hat. I'm like, okay, it's touching the youth. Not only you see the adults or, the content creators or just individuals that's involved with Bleecker, but also you seeing the kids involved, which that's when I start seeing, okay, it's becoming a lifestyle. So when you start seeing kids involved, that's when you know it's cool. It's touching youth. And I learned so much from youth, especially, like I say, we have our old ways and things of that nature when it comes to up in age, but how it's touching the kids and the way I seen Bleecker is doing that, I think it's pretty cool.
It's really interesting. Yeah, that's got me thinking a little bit. The connection with the kids and the lifestyle brand thing, that's cool. Did you design your own logo here?
No, I did not design my own logo. Shout out to Nicole Bursey. She actually did that logo for me. Great relationship with her, and what she does with designing I thought was pretty cool. I gave her my vision. Literally, she mapped it out for me step by step on how I would visually want it to look, and boom, it was there. I wanted to come with a Saved by the Bell feel.
Okay.
So that's where the
I
colors
can see that.
come
It's
from.
got a little bit of a Saved by the Bell feel on it. I like that. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the type of feel that I wanted to come for.
And then I like the I assume the line is kind of invoking, for me, it kind of invoked like a heart rate, chart, shows like a heartbeat, right? So you got a heartbeat in your logo.
Yes, sir.
I thought that was pretty cool too.
Yep. That was the look that I was going for. I went through a few looks, but that was mainly what I started off with. I was kind of pushed on a certain color that I wanted, but she was like, yo, I think this would be pretty dope. You should visually do it that way. I want to say a week later, after looking at it, it settled in with me.
Yeah. How do you sell this stuff?
So basically, I have my own website, which is drcollectible.com. And from there, what I did was I started with pre-sales. I didn't have the money to put up the capital at the time to be able to try to get so many different hats. So what I did was, okay, I talked to the distributors and I said, hey, this is what I want. And how quick can you get this done for me? They said, well, maybe like a week and a half, 2 weeks. So, okay. Well, the distributors, they gave me pictures of how things would look. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to utilize them pictures. And I'm going to utilize them pictures for the pre-sale. So I started doing the pictures, putting them out there and say, hey, this is what I'm selling, which was only the hats. And at that time, everybody was like, yo, that's dope. I like that. I'm buying. So I started collecting everything for as the money that came with the hats. And what I did was I took all that and put all that into the hats, got them shipped out to everyone. And I didn't come out my pocket not one time. then the money that was set to the side from me being able to make the revenue from the hats, I put that into more hats and more clothing, which was the shirts and things of that nature. So I was able to look at a situation where, okay, now that I got people attention with content, let me try to see if I can do the apparel. And the pre-sale just worked out for itself for me. And once again, didn't have to come out a dime out of my pocket to be able to get them hats to them people, because I did the pre-sale for it. So kind of worked out.
That is fascinating. And that's actually a great entrepreneurial story, because it shows that with some creativity, you can figure out a way to get a business off the ground with no money. I mean, you launched that without money. You were using the money from your pre-orders to pay for your actual first, order to get all the supplies.
Yep.
It takes creativity, it takes hustle, it takes drive, ingenuity to make that kind of thing happen.
Yes, sir.
And you made that happen. And I think that's a good lesson for any aspiring entrepreneur out there who maybe who doesn't have the resources. Maybe they don't have the money in the bank account to pursue their dream, but are there other creative ways you could get it off the ground without having to have that money in your bank account holding you back?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's definitely how it went. And like I say, from there, I think the possibilities are endless if you just try to think about it and do things. That is just, well, I would say this, for things that you can do for yourself at that time. I think things will get better when the time moves on and you start pursuing your dreams. Things will get better, but definitely work with what you can. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So you've had the apparel launch. So what do you do today in terms of apparel? You've obviously got the hats. Have you branched into, what's your catalog kind of at this point?
So right now I've been thinking about the button up. So all right. So I'm a big fan of like Route 21. Okay. I like button ups. I like the crazy design button ups. Something like how Ken Golden wears like the crazy button ups with the different designs and the wacky feel that it has to it. I love them. So for me, I think about like guys like Tyler, the Creator, Odd Future, how they have so much brightness and colors and things of that nature that comes with their hats. I'd say for this is like, picked out one color, other color kind of work, but then like you say, you got the turquoise with the yellow. I just love bright colors for me. Also, I've been looking to get into like kicks.
Okay.
Yeah, kicks is another thing, coming out with my own brand of like a shoe.
Okay.
Inspiration as like Soulja Boy. Because of me being into dance, I like Soulja Boy. So I like his entrepreneurship and the things that he do. So I try to get in, I want to get into like shoes. The other thing is accessories. Like bands like these here. Accessories for hats, buttons. I can put like buttons on the side of the hat. Just little knickknacks, little things that makes the outfit just much cooler. Even if they don't have a Dr. Collectible brand on, maybe they'll want to buy that pen to throw it on the side of their hat or their jean jacket.
I like it.
Yeah,
I've got a suggestion.
Yeah,
I think as you pursue this path, you should also try to get like a customized card case. Like maybe work with Zion cases, because if you think about it, like people at a card show, their card case, most people are walking around a card show carrying a case around, right?
Yeah,
that's kind of part of them, right? That's kind of part of their accessories, and for the most part, the cases have always just been plain black, kind of boring. Now Zion Cases has come out with color cases, which have added appeal, but they're just simply one color. They're just simply, bright blue or bright pink or yellow or whatever. There's no design to them. They're just a color. It would be interesting if you like had a Dr. Collectible card case that had like a really kind of intricate design to it that then would kind of, match the whole, like, round out the apparel,
It's all right. So it's interesting that you said that. There's something I've been thinking about, and it's when I first started. I wanted to create a Dr. Collectibles cleaning case where it's like a package where you have different items to help clean your cards.
Okay.
That was something I was thinking about. It was a company. It was years ago. You had the little scope,
right? The loop.
Yes, like I wanted to create my own patent for something
Okay.
like that, products and things of that nature, even gloves. I even thought about, gloves. Anything with the doctor feel to it.
That's interesting. It would tie into the brand, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about something like that. I thought that'd be
Interesting.
cool.
Interesting. Okay, those are all interesting ways you could expand it. Talk to me about content creation because as I said at the beginning of the show, like I see you a lot now, like especially on Instagram. You're active, very active in terms of content creation. How have you grown that? When did you kind of start getting into the content creation game, and how have you evolved that over time?
So when I first looked at content creating, I was only putting out pictures of cards. And then I wanted to say, how can I transition myself to make great content? I was kind of scared of being in front of the camera talking about collectibles. So the first thing I did when I came up with an idea, I said, I'm going to start up something called the pull-up tour. And I will go to different card shops. And I should say this. The idea was inspired by Drive-In Dives and Dimes.
Okay. Yep.
That show. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to different card shops. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell their story. I'm going to talk about the rare cards that they have in their store. I don't care if it was a comic book store. Anything that could be collectible, I was there. Days Sports Cards, Kaboom ATL. There are so many different card shops that I went to in Atlanta. And I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. And from there, the reason why I call it the pull-up tour was because when you go to a door, the first thing you kind of say is pull up or pull. So I'm like, thinking about entering, what's a catchy name? And from there, I gained relationships with these card shops. So I was thinking about doing pop-up shops at these card shops with my brand, being able to promote myself. On top of that, promoting the content from the pull-up tour. That was the first idea that I had where I'm like, okay, people are gravitating because now I'm doing collaborations with these card shops. Their fan base is now interested in me and seeing what I'm about. And from there, my cousin, Chris, he was like, hey, I think you need to get in front of the camera.
Okay, so these videos were more, you were behind the camera, just focused on the cards and things you would see from that perspective.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Doing the voiceover field.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep. And from there, my cousin was like, hey, well, two individuals, my cousin Chris and one of my partners go by Dot Bando. And he was like, yo, you need to get in front of the camera. I was only doing the voiceovers. So I was very great at editing, but I never put myself out there. After that, I started doing videos where I started to put myself out there where people can see me. And it started gravitating way more different than just a voiceover. From there, the opportunities were endless. And then on the creating part, I wanted to make it business-wise. Not just to create content, but how can I create a business out of this? Then I started to do the partnerships with companies like Card Shop Live, Candy Digital. I love NFTs, so I started doing content for them. NBA Top Shop, NFL All Day. It's not a big market where people are talking about NFTs, but these companies are reaching out to me because they know I love it. They know that what I'm doing is genuine because I'm really in it. And not only NFTs, I started looking to, okay, let me maybe try my own show on Card Shop Live, talking about what all the breakers are breaking on the site, talking about, the product. And everything else just started blooming from there as far as content wise. But that first idea, the pull-up tour, really struck it far for me. But then I created another element. I'm gonna leave with this. I created another element, which was not only what I did with the card shops, I started doing it with the card shows.
Yeah.
Creating them partnerships, doing the same thing. So I just started looking at content creating as endless possibilities. Content creating wise, but also business wise.
Yeah. Speaking of the card shows,
Yes.
maybe the premier partnership that you formed was with the National, and this year you did a lot of coverage. At the National show, you were one of their official ambassadors. Tell me about that.
Yes. So when I, man, that opportunity there, shout out to Ray. Um, he came to me and, well, actually, I reached out to him first and I wanted to meet up with him at, what was it? The Union Marketplace.
And this is Ray Schulte. He's the communications lead for the National. We actually had him on the Geoff Wilson show about a month ago, a little over a month ago, talking about the future of the National. And so, yeah,
Yes.
so he's a great guy and definitely a good representative of the National. So, all right. So you connected with him, you said, at the Union Marketplace show?
Yeah, connected with him. And no, I didn't get a chance to connect with him because of weather and flights and things of that nature. I was going to meet up with him there, and we said, hey, we're going to meet at Mint Collective.
Okay.
Met at Mint Collective. We talked first. The first time I see him with Leaf Trade. Just hop right into conversation. Great conversation from there. We started talking one-on-one about, my vision, how I'm creating content. And he was like, hey, been watching for a while. Let me give you an opportunity. How would you like to be, ambassador for the National? And from there, I was like, okay, I'm going to take this serious. Then I started doing my background work on it. I'm like, oh, wow. People started reaching out to me. It was like, yo, like, you're Jackie Robertson in this situation. Like, do you know, like, there's never been an African-American face headliner or leading or, as far as creating content when it comes to the National. And, I appreciate Ray as well for trying to break barriers, putting different situations and putting different people out there for the National. I just thought it was amazing what he did for me and just believing in my situation and how I was creating content. And boom, I took it in as day one and we talked. He let me know what he wanted from me as far as with the National, but just be yourself. And that's what I did.
That's awesome. So you did a lot of coverage of the National. Now I see your stuff. I see most of your stuff on Instagram. Is Instagram your primary platform, or are you doing things on other content channels as well?
All right, so it gets interesting. It's my first time actually explaining this on how I deal with social media.
Okay.
So only platform I have on my phone is Instagram. Mm-hmm. I have everything else deleted. I do have TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. Even Pinterest. I'm on everything. Twitter. But I don't have these social media channels on my phone. So I look at a course of a day like this. I got 24 hours. 8 is probably going to go into sleep, which I maybe sleep about 6 to 5. There, I'm like, okay. So the average person probably going to sleep around 8 hours. I got 16 hours left. All right. 16 hours, how I'm dealing with content. So let's say, for example, I got Facebook on my phone, Twitter, everything. From a course of a day, I'm spending maybe an hour on each and every platform, just the course of the day. Well, that's 5 hours already gone. 6 hours, 7 hours. Then on top of that, let's say you're working a 9 to 5. You're not able to put all you want into content. So that's really your whole day going. And the reason why I only do Instagram is because I do a lot of my business work on there. And what I would do is I would download TikTok, download all these social media sites, post on there, delete them all. So I don't get distracted throughout my course of the day. I want to be busy. I want to create content. There's two people on social media. Either you're consuming the content or you're creating it. Period. There's middlemans, but for me, I want to utilize my whole 24 hours if I got it. And for me, I do go back and I would download and, socialize on these different platforms. But it's mostly just to put out content. Most of my socializing and business and things of that nature are done on Instagram. So that's why I have Instagram on my phone. but I choose not to have these other social medias on my phone because of the distractions. I might be on YouTube, start watching something about Marvel. It's an hour in, 2 hours, 3. Yep. That's how it works for me.
When you're in hustle mode, eliminating distractions is a smart idea. I watch very little TV other than live sports. Like for me, it's basically live sports. I enjoy Shark Tank. I watch Shark Tank as an investor.
I love that show.
I watch Shark Tank and I watch live sports, and that is basically it. Like I all these TV series over the last several years that have been super popular, like Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad. I haven't seen an episode of any of these things.
Me either.
And it's just only so many hours in a day. And for me, it's, where do I want to put my time? And I want to put my time into, growing my businesses and creating great content and doing these types of things. And as you said, this stuff is super time consuming. And I know there's so many people in the world that wish that they had the time to become a content creator or start their own business or whatever. And oftentimes, like, that time you wish you had, that time is actually there. It's just being monopolized by either watching TV shows or by getting sucked into social media, losing yourself, in TikTok for an hour or two, right? Like that's actually where that time is, that you could recapture it to be able to become a content creator, start your own business. And so it seems like you're very astute and very focused on, optimizing your time to be able to get as much as you can done every single day.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I want to talk more about what you when you're talking about the national, you said first African-American face of the national, right? It's very important. One thing, if you look back on the history of the sports card hobby, this hobby has had very little diversity. I mean, it's been traditionally, when you think of the sports card hobby, you think of kind of, white middle-aged men, white kids. You don't really think about women. You don't really think about African Americans. You don't really think about people of color. It's white Americans is kind of what a lot of the sports card hobby has been. It feels like it's starting to change. It feels like we're getting a more diverse collector base coming into the hobby. And I've talked, over the last few months, I've talked with some African American collectors, and some of them have said to me, which is kind of interesting, like, some of us have always been here. We've just not been front and center. Like, we've just not been maybe seen. And there are interesting reasons for that, right? Like sometimes the environment's not always been welcoming or inclusive or that type of thing.
Right.
It seems like you're trying to lead a little bit of a charge there and becoming a face for, African Americans, perhaps, diversity, perhaps. What are your thoughts right now kind of on the state of the hobby when it comes to diversity and where you would like to see that go?
I think it's still growing. I think, how should I say this? Putting the words together. I think about when I first saw social media content for collectibles. I think about that. And not only, I think about the kid, but I think about the adult. I think about how am I exposing myself to the masses of all individuals when it comes to the hobby. When they see an African American talking about collectibles for that African American, for that Asian, that Korean, that Native American, whatever background you come from, you want to say, oh, I can do that too. Oh, he makes it cool. Oh, it's just not the, the stigma that you hear. I want to be able to change that and break them barriers. I should be able to shake hands with you and shake hands with another individual and be open and with welcome arms into the hobby. This past weekend came across an individual, a Hispanic, never been to a card show, day of his life. I want to say he was maybe in his 50s. And to see him say, yo, thank you for giving me this experience. That's what I want to do. Because when he leaves that place, he can go to other Hispanics, the Spanish culture, the community, and bring them more into the hobby. by off the experience that he got. I think it's very wise to look at what we're putting out content wise, because it can steer away people or it could bring people in. I'm all about bringing everyone in. So I think the state of the hobby right now is still growing. I think we're in a process where I see guys like FD, rolling with FD, Prism Guy, Wiz Collector, Mr. Get and Flip It, Faces Such as Mine, creating content, doing different things, coming with a card show, showing you the art of negotiating. I think it's open to be able to see us as individuals and African Americans to be able to show our face, but also being able to see an individual like me and yourself be able to have a conversation without having, being able to agree or disagree on whatever, but to have the conversation, to be able to sit down. It got to start somewhere. So I think for people that's coming into the hobby, come in. It's open arms for anyone, and I love to see the diversity of where we're going now compared to where I seen it in 2020. There's been tremendous growth. I think also businesses are starting to notice that as well. You need to have more diversity. I see it in the content, working with companies and doing content with like Tops, eBay Collectibles, just at the national, doing all kind of sorts of stuff. So I know for a fact is diversity. It's in a slow process, but I think eventually we're going to get there.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense if you look at kind of all the adjacent areas. Like obviously sports is very diverse, sneaker culture, very diverse. You've got, I mean, obviously there's a lot of cultural elements as well. Like, I mean, when you look at like, music, obviously extremely diverse. And I feel like cards should be seen as an element of culture, like how music is, like how, sneaker culture is this type of thing. Like it sports, of course, because it's deeply connected to sports. So it feels to me like it should be a lot more diverse than it is. And it feels that and I hope that the hobby really embraces that. I believe the hobby embraces that, but I also believe that companies within the hobby need to do better, at becoming more diverse, ourselves included. And there needs to be more diversity. You need to see more diversity in content.
Yep.
Hear more people with different backgrounds, different skin colors, different nationalities, producing content, talking about the hobby, that type of thing. So I love that story you said about the Hispanic man at the card show this last weekend, because as you said, like I'd say Hispanics are underrepresented in the hobby, right? We don't see a lot of Hispanic content creators or necessarily a lot of Hispanic representation at card shows or that type of thing. And we should, just like we should see more African Americans, just like we should see more Asians, just like we should see, many different groups coming into this, because I think ultimately that's going to make the hobby stronger. And not only grow more. I mean, from a business sense, it makes sense, obviously, because that's growth, but it's also going to just make the fabric of the hobby a lot stronger if the hobby itself is more reflective of just a diverse set of people coming together to enjoy something together.
I agree with you on that. I stand on principles and values. I'm a God-fearing individual. I want to see, I treat others. For the golden rule that I was taught when I was younger was treat others how you want to be treated. Plain and simple. You're going to get the energy that you put out. You're going to get it back. You put out a lot of negative energy, and once again, everybody is not going to agree either. But I'm here to agree to disagree, but to have that open conversation and understand an individual and why they think the way they think. But also, you're going to hear me out. You're going to, be open-minded into how I think as well. So for me, I think, like I say, I think we're getting to that point. Somebody has to kick down the doors. Somebody has to break the barriers. I'm open for that. Quote that I heard not exact words, but usually nobody finished the first. No, usually the first person to do something usually get the bad rap, and then it's like the second or third person that does it, they get the glory. I don't think exactly like that, but I don't mind being that first person to try to open doors for someone to come in 15 years later and help change this hobby, to new heights. I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to put myself on the line for that because I seen this hobby change my life. So I'm willing to, put myself on the line to show diversity and say, hey, the next kid that comes in that's looking at me and seeing what I'm speaking on, and 15 years later, he's opening up a business and a hobby, car shop, whatever it is, and he has the mixture of employees there. But not only that, giving people a chance as well. So that's what I'm about.
It's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, I love that. Keep that mission up. It's important for sure.
Thank you.
I want to talk about kids. You've done work with kids, obviously, in the hobby. We talked about that a little bit. I know you organized a kids trade night here in Atlanta, and you talked about kids being the future of the hobby. How can we grow and nurture kids in the sports card hobby better?
I think first thing is to be honest with kids. That's the first thing. Don't do kids wrong. And what I mean by this is that, let's say if you're at a card show and that kid that comes up to your booth says, hey, I got this card, and you knowing that it could be worth $500 to $1,000, but you say, yeah, I'll give you like $200 for it, $100. And that kid finds out 5 months later that he got jacked for his card. That could steer away a kid from either leaving the hobby, but also telling the experience of how bad it was for him, which steers away other people. So now there's no growth. You're stumping the growth. On top of that, be truthful to the kid. Look up. That kid 20 years later now has a holy grail that you want. And he remembers what you did for him. Oh, I'm going to give you that deal on that holy grail. Or, I think about just the whole duality of like what goes around comes around. So for kids, I think first of all is being honest. If you're going to make kid-friendly content, think about what you're putting out. How can you educate these kids? Something that me and my friend thought about was coming with a cartoon for kids where, it has that feel of Magic School Bus and the movie, I don't know if you ever seen it before, My Friend Martin, where they was going back in time and learning about Martin Luther King. Mm-hmm. I want to do something like that for the kids where I got 4 friends going to card shop. Welcome to my card shop, blah, blah, this and that. They look at that Muhammad Ali card. Not only they go back in time, but they get the mindset of how things were. They're being educated. How many punches did he throw? 12. How many jabs did he throw? Like, I want to be able to educate kids, but also make this hobby fun for them. They should be able to want to be in this thing and have a good time. It's so much that I see where with kids is like the content is, guys doing negotiations. And there's nothing wrong with that. Something a friend told me. The reason he left the sports card hobby and got into Pokemon because it was too rough for him. It was too macho. And there's nothing wrong with that because, it's sports. Like, that's what it is. It's competitive. You're going to pick one side or the other. But he was like, yo, I go to Collecticon, there's kids wearing, Pikachu outfit and doesn't get talked about. You see that at a sports card event, you might look at them twice like, oh, what's going on here? So it's the duality part and making this thing interesting. I think Collecticons and Pokemon is doing a great way of bringing kids into the hobby. But I think for me, when it comes to sports card, let's be honest. Let's show them the art of negotiation, but let's make it fun for them to where they want to be able to reciprocate that type of content. that's not understanding to a 7 or 8 year old. I have seen kids with $10,000 cards. Even what you do for your son is great. The way I see him handle cards and how he negotiate, and then on top of that, just even speaking with him, being excited, that joy, that feel, that imagination. As adults, we lose that imagination, man. Keep that. I'm telling you, it's so impactful to kids. And I think if we keep that type of aura, we'll be able to get kids to stay in and become these future businessmen and women, to create opportunities in a hobby, not just, the corporate companies, but that mom and pop store that been around for like 30 years and creating opportunity to everyone in that community, in that town. I think about things like that. So I think for the future, for kids, it's something there. It's just how we do it now that could catapult the hobby to newer heights in the future.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, as you said earlier, kids are the future. And I mean, one thing I love about getting kids involved with sports cards is everything they learn about negotiating and, dollars and cents and things going up and things coming down in price. And, I love that aspect, because those are business skills that even if they don't go on and ever do anything with sports cards again in their lives,
right,
hopefully that has given them a foundation. Hopefully those experiences have given them a foundation to be more comfortable with money and to be more comfortable with talking to people and be more comfortable with negotiating and be more comfortable with saying yes or no, or be more comfortable with standing up for themselves. And hopefully those elements carry forward to whatever they do, because that's going to make them a stronger individual. And then that's going to make whatever they go on and do in life, they're going to be more successful at, and they'll make that stronger. And
exactly.
So I think cards are just an awesome training ground for kids to learn those skills.
Yes. I really do. I agree with you. I think it's sports cards, and I don't even think we hit the limit yet. I've seen the surge, but I think regardless, 15, 20 years, 30 years from now, 50 years from now, we're going to be looking back and seeing like just the growth of the hobby from where it is now, and like the possibilities of like, it's what, 7-10 billion people on earth. I don't know, but we just haven't even like scratched the surface. It's not many content creators out there. There's not enough car shops. There's just not enough of what we're doing. Even for you, what you do with Sports Car Investing, and how you try to get to the kids and how you get to the adults. And I mean, anyone from a young age to adult can look at your content. And that's what I think, like, just that alone, I think, to where we make the hobby accessible for everyone. Yo, it's endless for the possibilities that could happen.
Yeah, I agree. Daryl, this has been wonderful. Tell everybody out there who maybe isn't following you right now how they can find your stuff.
Yeah, so you can catch me majority of the time. I am on Instagram, but yes, I'm on every other platform: Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, you name it, I am there. Also,
is it Dr. Collectible? Is that
yes.
Dr. Collectible on these platforms?
Yep, Dr. Collectible on all platforms. I think Twitter is Docs Collectibles. I'm still fighting for Dr. Collectible on Twitter. Somebody got it, but yeah. But other than that, I have a website as well, and I'm on other platforms. You can see me on Car Shop Live. Also other websites as well where I'm doing partnerships with. You can see me on there. Tuned In Grading, music. They grade music. You can see me on their platform. So anywhere where I'm accessible with collectibles, if you don't see me there yet, I am going to be there. I'm trying to be accessible and be available. That's my one ultimate thing. So yeah, you should be able to Google me. You should be able to find me.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Daryl. Thank you for coming on the Geoff Wilson Show. And for everybody out there, don't forget that these shows are available the full length on YouTube, but also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you want to listen to this show on the go, just subscribe to the Geoff Wilson Show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you can listen to them there in addition to YouTube. Appreciate you, and we'll see you for the next one. Take care.